She had 30 seconds before they found her. Lyra's wedding dress was soaked in mud, her lungs burning as boots pounded the cobblestones behind her. The cathedral bells still rang, mocking, triumphant, but she wasn't inside. She'd seen them, her sister, her fiancé, together. And now she was running through the merchant quarter like a criminal, because the only thing worse than what she'd witnessed was marrying the man who'd done it. If you want to know how a woman went from runaway bride to queen in one impossible night, stick with me until the end. Like this video, if you believe people can rewrite their own fate, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's go. The hem of Lyra's dress caught on a broken cartwheel, and she stumbled hard, scraping her palms against the street. Blood mixed with dirt. She didn't stop. Couldn't. Behind her, voices shouted. Her father's trackers, the ones he'd hired because he knew. He'd always known she might bolt. There, down the alley! She veered left into a narrow passage between two warehouses, her heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. The scent block oil she'd rubbed on her wrists was already wearing thin. In another minute, maybe two, they'd pick up her trail, and this whole desperate sprint would end with her dragged back to that cathedral, to that man, to a life that would slowly kill her from the inside out. The alley opened onto the carriage lane. Lyra's eyes darted across the scene, merchants loading goods, a drunk sleeping against a lamppost, and 3 black carriages lined up outside the magistrate's office. The middle one had its door slightly ajar. She didn't think, she just moved. Lyra threw herself inside, yanking the door shut behind her and pressing her back against the velvet interior. The carriage was dark, curtains drawn. She gulped air, trying to calm her breathing, trying to think past the roar of panic in her skull. Interesting entrance. The voice came from the shadows across from her. Low, male, laced with something between amusement and danger. Lyra's head snapped up. Her eyes adjusted slowly, pulling a figure from the darkness. He sat perfectly still, one leg crossed over the other, hands resting on the head of a black cane. His coat was expensive, tailored to a body that didn't need the help. Dark hair fell just past his collar, and his eyes, gray, cold, sharp as a blade's edge, studied her like she was a puzzle he'd already solved. She knew that face. Everyone did. Cale Draven, the Alpha King. "Oh, gods," Lyra whispered. "Oh, no." "Not the reaction I usually get," Cale said. "But I'll take it." Outside, the tracker's voices grew louder. Lyra's pulse spiked again. She looked at the door, then at him, her mind racing through 1,000 bad options and landing on the only one that mattered. "Please," she said, "please don't." The carriage door rattled. A fist pounded against it. "Open up. We're looking for a woman, wedding dress, brown hair. Have you seen her?" Cale didn't move, didn't even blink. He just held Lyra's gaze, and in that moment she saw something flicker there, calculation maybe, or curiosity. Then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Stay quiet," he said softly. He leaned forward and pushed the door open just enough to block the view inside. Lyra pressed herself into the corner, her breath caught in her throat. "What's this about?" Cale's voice was different now, bored, aristocratic, the tone of someone who didn't appreciate being interrupted. "Apologies, my lord," one of the trackers said quickly. "We're searching for a runaway bride, the Vale family's daughter. You haven't seen—" "I've seen a lot of things today," Cale interrupted. "None of them your concern. The family is offering a reward, sir, and her father, he's connected to the council. If she's made it into any noble carriage—" "Are you suggesting I'm harboring fugitives?" The silence outside was sharp enough to cut. "No, my lord, of course not. We're just—" "Then move along." Cale pulled the door shut. The latch clicked. Through the curtain's edge, Lyra watched the trackers exchange looks, then retreat down the lane, their boots fading into the distance. She exhaled, the sound shaky and too loud in the enclosed space. Cale leaned back, studying her again with that unsettling focus. "Thank you," Lyra managed. Her voice sounded strange, thin, breathless. "I didn't mean to—" "You threw yourself into my carriage covered in mud and blood, wearing what I assume is a very expensive wedding dress," Cale said. "That requires intent. It requires desperation." "Same thing, usually." Lyra pushed a strand of hair out of her face, her hands still trembling. She needed to get out, needed to disappear before the trackers doubled back or her father sent more. But her legs felt like water. and the adrenaline that had carried her this far was starting to drain, leaving only exhaustion and the awful, crushing weight of what she'd done. "I should go," she said. "Probably," Kale agreed, "but you won't make it 10 steps." He wasn't wrong. Lyra looked down at herself, the torn dress, the bloody palms, the mud caked on her shoes. She looked like exactly what she was, a runaway bride with nowhere left to run. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Kale tilted his head slightly, considering the question. "I'm not sure I did. Might have just delayed the inevitable." "That's not an answer." "No," he said. "It's not." The carriage jolted forward suddenly, wheels clattering over cobblestones. Lyra grabbed the edge of the seat to steady herself. "What? Where are we going?" "Away from here," Kyle said simply. "Unless you'd prefer I drop you back at the cathedral." Lyra's stomach twisted. The thought of going back, of facing her father, her sister, him, made her want to throw herself out of the moving carriage and take her chances with the street. "No," she said quickly, "not there." "Then sit down and be quiet. We have a long ride ahead." "To where?" Kale's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Somewhere your trackers won't follow." Time. The mountains rose in the distance like jagged teeth against the sky. Lyra watched them through the carriage window, her mind still struggling to catch up with everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. She'd run from her wedding, hidden in the Alpha King's carriage, and now she was being taken to God's new where, with no plan, no allies, and no idea what came next. "You're very quiet," Kyle observed. Lyra glanced at him. He hadn't moved much during the ride, just sat there in that same controlled stillness, watching the landscape pass or watching her. She couldn't tell which. "I'm thinking," she said. "Dangerous habit. Better than not thinking." "Depends on the situation." Lyra pulled her arms tighter around herself. The carriage was warm, but she felt cold down to her bones. Shock, probably. Or reality finally catching up. "You know who I am," she said. It wasn't a question. "Lyra Vale," Kyle said. "Daughter of Marcus Vale, council advisor, engaged to Lord Patron of House Coro, or you were, until about—" He checked his pocket watch. 3 hours ago." "You're well informed." "I make it a point to be." Lyra looked at him more carefully now, trying to read past the surface. The stories about Kael Draven were legend, the Alpha King who'd unified the northern packs through force and strategy, who commanded loyalty through fear and respect in equal measure. People said he was ruthless, calculating, that he could smell weakness the way wolves smelled blood. But he'd lied to her trackers, hid her, taken her away from the city instead of turning her over for whatever reward her father was offering. "Why?" she asked again. Kael's eyes met hers, and this time she saw something shift in them, a flicker of interest maybe, or recognition. "You used nightshade oil," he said, "on your wrists, to mask your scent." Lyra's hand instinctively went to her wrist. "How did you—" "It's old magic. Most people don't know it exists, let alone how to use it." He leaned forward slightly. "Where did you learn that?" "My grandmother," Lyra said carefully. "She taught me things, before she died." "Smart woman." She was. Kael sat back again, his expression unreadable. A runaway bride who knows scent magic and throws herself into random carriages. You're either very desperate or very stupid. "Both," Lyra said. "Probably." For the first time, something like genuine amusement crossed Kael's face. It changed him, softened the sharp edges just enough to make him look almost human. "Fair enough," he said. The carriage turned onto a mountain road, the wheels crunching over gravel. Through the window, Lyra could see a fortress rising from the rock face, all dark stone and iron gates, built into the mountain itself, like it had grown there. "This is your home?" she asked. "One of them. It looks like a prison. Sometimes the same thing." The gates opened as they approached, guards stepping aside without a word. The carriage rolled through into a courtyard lit by torches, their flames dancing in the wind. Lyra felt her pulse quicken again, a different kind of fear now. She was in the heart of the Alpha King's territory, surrounded by his people, with no way out and no leverage. The carriage stopped. Kael opened the door and stepped out, then turned back to offer her his hand. Lyra hesitated. "You can stay in there if you want," Kael said, "but it gets cold at night this high up." She took his hand. His grip was firm, steady. He helped her down onto the cobblestones, and she realized just how much taller he was, at least a head above her, broad-shouldered and built like someone who'd spent his life fighting. A woman appeared from the shadows of the courtyard, older, gray-haired, dressed in practical wool. She took one look at Lyra and raised an eyebrow. "Found a stray, did you?" she said to Kael. "Something like that," Kael replied. "Get her cleaned up, fed, give her a room in the east wing." "The guest wing?" "Yes, Marta." Marta's eyes narrowed, but she nodded. "Come on then," she said to Lyra. "You look like you've been dragged through a ditch." Lyra glanced at Kael one more time. He was already walking away, his coat billowing behind him, shouting orders to someone across the courtyard. "Don't stand there gawking," Marta said. "Move." Lyra followed her inside. The room they gave her was nothing like what she'd expected. It was large, warm, with a fire already crackling in the hearth and a bed piled high with furs. A bath had been drawn, steam rising from the water, scented with something herbal and clean. Marta stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You'll find clothes in the wardrobe. Plain stuff, but it'll fit. Dinner's in an hour. Someone will come get you." "Thank you," Lyra said quietly. Marta grunted. "Don't thank me yet. You're in his house now. That means you play by his rules." She left, closing the door behind her. Lyra stood alone in the silence, the reality of her situation finally settling over her like a heavy blanket. She'd escaped one cage, but she wasn't sure she hadn't just walked into another. She peeled off the ruined wedding dress, letting it fall to the floor in a heap of silk and lace and broken promises. The bathwater was almost too hot, but she sank into it anyway, letting it burn away the grime and the fear and the exhaustion. Her palms stung where she'd scraped them. She watched the blood swirl in the water, turning it faintly pink. She'd run. She'd actually done it. And now she had no idea what came next. Dinner was held in a great hall that could have fit 50 people, but currently held only 2, Lyra and Kael. He sat at the head of the table, she at his right, with enough food between them to feed an army. "Your staff doesn't eat with you?" Lyra asked. "Not usually," Kael said. He poured wine into her glass, then his own. "They prefer their own company." "Can't imagine why." Kael's mouth twitched. "You're braver than you look. Or stupider. We covered that." She picked at the food on her plate. Roasted meat, root vegetables, bread still warm from the oven. It smelled incredible, but her stomach was tied in knots. "You should eat," Kael said. "You look half dead." "I feel half dead." "Then eat anyway." Lyra forced herself to take a bite. Then another. The food was good, better than good. And once she started, she realized just how hungry she was. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, before the ceremony, before everything fell apart. "What happens now?" she asked between bites. Kael leaned back in his chair, watching her. "That depends." "On what?" "On what you want." Lyra set down her fork. "I want to not be dragged back to that wedding. I want my family to stop trying to sell me off like livestock. I want—" She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "What?" Kael prompted. "A choice," Lyra said quietly. "I want a choice." Kael was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded, once, like she'd said something that made sense to him. "Your father will come looking for you," he said. "The council too, probably. Petron definitely will." "I know. And when they do, I can't keep you hidden forever, not without consequences." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" Lyra met his eyes across the table. "Time. Just time to figure out what to do next." Kael considered this. 3 days, he said finally. "I'll give you 3 days. After that, you make the decision. Go back or find another way forward. And if I can't, then I'll make it for you." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact, delivered without malice or emotion, just the truth of how things worked in his world. "Thank you," Lyra said. Kael raised his glass. "Don't thank me yet." They drank in silence, the fire crackling in the hearth, the mountain wind howling outside the windows, And for the first time since she'd thrown herself into that carriage, Lyra felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her room, looking out over the mountains, the stars scattered above like broken glass. Somewhere down in the valley, her father was probably tearing the city apart looking for her. Patron too. And her mother would be devastated, not because Lyra had run, but because now the family's deal with House Coro was broken. The alliance that was supposed to save them from bankruptcy, from ruin, was gone because of her. Lyra pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Can't sleep? She spun around. Cale stood in the doorway, still dressed, his coat gone but his shirt untucked. He looked different like this, less controlled, more human. The door was locked, Lyra said. It's my house. So you just walk into women's rooms whenever you want? Only when they look like they're about to do something stupid. Lyra frowned. I wasn't. You were thinking about leaving, Kyle said. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I can see it on your face. You don't know what I'm thinking. I know that look. I've seen it before. He crossed to the window, standing beside her. Up close, she could smell him. Wood smoke and leather and something else, something wild she couldn't name. Where would you even go? He asked. I don't know, Lyra admitted. Away. Somewhere they won't find me. There is no such place. Then what am I supposed to do? Cale turned to look at her, and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, something almost like understanding. Stop running, he said, and start fighting. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You threw yourself into a stranger's carriage to escape a life you didn't want. That takes guts. Use them. Lyra stared at him. Why do you care? I don't, Kyle said, but his voice lacked conviction. They stood there in the silence, the distance between them suddenly feeling much smaller than it should. Get some sleep, Kale said finally. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what comes next. He left without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Lyra stood alone in the dark, her heart beating too fast, her mind racing with questions she didn't have answers for. But for the first time in her life, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to have all the answers. Maybe she just had to be brave enough to find them. The next morning, Lyra woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of fresh bread. Someone had left a tray outside her door, breakfast, still warm. She ate quickly, then dressed in the clothes Marta had left, simple trousers, a tunic, boots that actually fit. When she stepped into the hallway, a young guard was waiting. The king wants to see you, he said. Training yard. Lyra followed him through the fortress, down stone corridors and past rooms filled with people going about their daily work. No one stared. No one whispered. She was just another person here, unremarkable. It felt strange and good. The training yard was an open courtyard surrounded by high walls, the ground packed dirt. Kyle stood in the center, stripped down to his shirt sleeves, a wooden practice sword in his hand. Across from him, a younger man circled warily, sweat already dripping down his face. Kale moved like water, fast, fluid, controlled. He disarmed the other man in 3 moves, the practice sword clattering to the ground. Again, Kyle said. The man retrieved his sword and reset. Lyra watched from the edge of the yard. Kyle fought like someone who'd been doing it his whole life, every movement precise, every strike deliberate. But there was something else too, restraint. He could have ended each bout in seconds, but he didn't. He let his opponent learn. When the session ended, Kyle dismissed the man and turned to Lyra. You're up, he said. What? He tossed her a practice sword. She caught it clumsily, the weight unfamiliar in her hands. I don't know how to fight, Lyra said. Then it's time you learned. Why? Kale crossed the yard to stand in front of her. Because if you're going to survive out there, you need to be able to defend yourself. Words won't always be enough. Lyra looked down at the sword, then back at him. I'll hurt myself. Probably, Kyle agreed, but you'll learn. He raised his own sword, settling into a ready stance. Come at me. I don't. Lyra, swing. She swung. He blocked it easily, the impact jarring her arm. Again. She tried again and again. Each time he blocked, corrected her grip, adjusted her stance. She was clumsy, uncoordinated, frustration building with every failed attempt. "You're thinking too much," Kyle said. "Stop trying to be perfect. Just move." "Easy for you to say." "You think I was born knowing how to fight?" Kyle lowered his sword. "I learned because I had to, same as you." Lyra wiped sweat from her forehead. Her arms ached, her hands were blistered, and she was pretty sure she'd pulled something in her shoulder, but she felt alive. "One more time," she said. Kyle smiled, a real smile this time, not the calculated one he used for everyone else. "One more time," he agreed. She swung. He blocked. But this time she anticipated it, shifted her weight, and brought the sword around in a clumsy arc that actually made him step back. "Better," Kale said. "Much better." Lyra grinned despite herself. And somewhere deep in her chest, something shifted, a feeling she couldn't quite name but recognized all the same. 3 days became 5, then 7. Lyra stopped counting after that. The fortress had a way of making time feel irrelevant, each day blending into the next through routines she'd never had before. Training at dawn with Kyle, breakfast in the kitchens with Marta and the staff, afternoons in the library, a massive room filled with books and maps and histories she'd never been allowed to read back home. Evenings in the Great Hall, where Kyle conducted business and she watched, learning more about power in those quiet observations than she'd learned in her entire life. Nobody questioned her presence. Nobody asked when she was leaving. It was like she'd always been there. "You're getting better," Kyle said, blocking her strike with barely any effort. They were in the training yard again, early morning mist still clinging to the ground. "Your footwork's improved." "I only tripped twice today," Lyra said, breathing hard. "Progress." She wiped sweat from her eyes and reset her stance. Her hands had calluses now, her arms muscle, where there'd only been softness before. She was changing here, becoming something different. Kyle came at her this time, a controlled attack that forced her to react. She blocked, sidestepped, blocked again. The rhythm was starting to feel natural, her body learning to anticipate his movements. Then he swept her legs out from under her. Lyra hit the ground hard, the air knocked from her lungs. She lay there staring up at the gray sky, trying to remember how breathing worked. Kale appeared above her, offering his hand. "You dropped your guard." "I noticed," Lyra gasped. He pulled her up. His grip was warm, steady, and he didn't let go immediately. They stood there in the morning quiet, close enough that she could see the lighter flecks of gray in his eyes. "You're thinking again," he said. "Can't help it." "What about?" Lyra looked away. The truth was she'd been thinking about a lot of things. About how comfortable she'd gotten here. About how easy it would be to stay. About the way her pulse jumped whenever Kyle touched her, which was happening more often and felt less accidental each time. "My mother," she lied. "I haven't heard anything about how she is." It wasn't entirely a lie. Her mother had been sick for months, some wasting illness the physicians couldn't name. It was part of why her father had been so desperate for the marriage alliance, for the Coro family's money and connections. Kale released her hand and stepped back. "I have people in the city. I can find out." "You do that?" "I'll do a lot of things if you ask." The way he said it made something flutter in Lyra's chest. She didn't know how to respond, so she picked up her practice sword instead. "Again," she said. Kyle's mouth curved into that almost smile. "Again." They trained until the sun burned off the mist and Marta appeared at the yard's edge, shouting that breakfast was getting cold. Lyra followed Kyle inside, her body sore, but her mind clearer than it had been in days. In the kitchens, the staff was already eating. A dozen people crowded around a long table, talking and laughing like family. Marta shoved a plate into Lyra's hands and pointed at an empty seat. "Eat before it's gone. These vultures don't leave scraps." Lyra sat between a young stable boy named Finn and one of the gate guards, a woman called Sarah, who had a scar across her cheek and a laugh that could wake the dead. They talked about everything and nothing. Repairs needed on the south wall, whose turn it was to muck out the stables, whether the winter would come early this year. Nobody treated her like a runaway bride. Nobody whispered about scandal or shame. She was just Lyra, and that was enough. Kyle ate at the head of the table, listening more than talking, but when he did speak, everyone stopped to hear him. Not because they were afraid, Lyra realized, because they respected him. It was nothing like the fear-based authority her father wielded, or the entitled arrogance of Petron. This was something earned. After breakfast, Kael caught her arm as she was leaving. "Walk with me." They went up to the battlements, the fortress spreading out below them like something carved from the mountain itself. The wind was sharp this high up, pulling at Lyra's hair. "I heard from my contacts," Kael said, "about your mother." Lyra's stomach clenched. "And?" "She's worse. The physicians are saying weeks, maybe days." The world tilted. Lyra gripped the stone wall to steady herself. "I'm sorry," Kael said quietly. "I need to see her." "That's a mistake." "I don't care." Lyra turned to face him. "She's dying. I won't let her die thinking I abandoned everyone. Going back puts you in danger. Your father will use it to trap you." "Then I'll be careful." "Lyra, I have to, Kael." Her voice broke on his name. She hadn't meant to use it, hadn't meant to sound so desperate, but it was too late to take it back. "Please, help me do this or I'll do it alone." Kael studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, the sound almost lost in the wind. "One condition," he said. "You don't go alone. I come with you. That'll make things worse. If they see you, they'll think twice before trying anything." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I'm not letting you walk back into that house without protection, not after what they did to you. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not, but I'm coming anyway." Lyra searched his face, looking for the angle, the calculation, but all she saw was determination. "Why?" she asked. "Why does this matter to you?" Kael's jaw tightened. "Because watching you run into that carriage covered in blood and terror." He stopped, shook his head. "You reminded me of someone, and I won't make the same mistake twice." "Who?" "Someone I failed to protect." He turned away, looking out over the mountains. "We leave at dawn. Pack light." He walked away before she could ask anything else, leaving her alone on the battlements with more questions than answers. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep again. She paced her room trying to prepare herself for what came next, seeing her mother, facing her father, the look in Petron's eyes when he realized she was back. A knock at the door startled her. "It's me," Marta's voice called. Lyra opened the door. Marta stood there holding a bundle of dark fabric. "Travel clothes," she said, pushing past Lyra into the room. "The fancy stuff you've been wearing won't survive the road." She laid out the clothes on the bed, practical trousers, a sturdy coat, boots reinforced with steel. Then she pulled out a small knife in a leather sheath. "This too," Marta said. "Don't tell me you don't know how to use it. I'll show you the basics." "Marta, I can't." "You can, and you will." The older woman's face was stern. "I've seen too many girls like you. Soft, sheltered, thinking the world will be kind just because you are. It won't, so you learn to bite back." She spent the next hour teaching Lyra how to hold the knife, where to strike if someone grabbed her, how to get free from different holds. It was brutal, practical, nothing like the formal combat Kael taught. "The point isn't to win," Marta said. "It's to survive long enough to run. Remember that." When she finally left, Lyra sat on the bed holding the knife, feeling its weight. She'd never held a weapon before coming here, never thought she'd need to. Now she couldn't imagine going anywhere without one. Dawn came too fast. Lyra, dressed in the travel clothes, strapped the knife to her belt and met Kael in the courtyard. He was already mounted, holding the reins of a second horse. "You ride?" he asked. "Barely." "Good enough." He helped her up into the saddle. "Stay close to me. Don't wander off. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood?" "Yes." They rode out as the sun broke over the mountains, just the two of them. No guards, no entourage. Kael said it would draw less attention, but Lyra suspected he had other reasons. He didn't seem like someone who brought company to things that mattered. The road down from the mountains was steep and winding. They rode in silence for the first hour, the only sounds the horses' hooves and the wind through the trees. "Tell me about her," Kael said eventually. "Your mother." Lyra glanced at him. "Why?" "Because we have a long ride, and I'm curious." She thought about it. She's kind. Too kind, maybe. She always believed people were good, even when they proved otherwise. Sounds naive. Sounds hopeful. Lyra adjusted her grip on the reins. When I was young, she used to tell me stories about women who saved themselves, who didn't wait for rescue. I think she wanted that for me, but she didn't know how to give it. So she married you off instead. She didn't have a choice. My father makes all the decisions. She just exists around them. Cale was quiet for a moment. And you don't want to be like her. I can't be like her. Not anymore. Good. They stopped to rest the horses at midday near a stream that cut through the forest. Lyra dismounted stiffly, her legs aching from the ride. How much farther? She asked. 4 hours? Maybe 5. We'll reach the city by nightfall. Lyra knelt by the stream, splashing cold water on her face. When she looked up, Cale was watching her with that intense focus he had, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. What? She asked. You're scared. Of course I'm scared. I'm walking back into the place I ran from. Then why do it? Because she's my mother, and because... Lyra stood, wiping her hands on her trousers. Because I need her to know I didn't run away from her, just from the life she was trying to give me. Cale nodded slowly. She'll understand. If she's the woman you say she is. And if my father tries to keep me there, then he'll have to go through me. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she had in weeks. They mounted up and rode on. The city appeared in the valley below them as the sun started to set, all golden light and lengthening shadows. Lyra's chest tightened at the sight of it. Home. Except it had never really felt like home, had it? Just a place she'd existed, waiting for her real life to start. We'll go in quiet, Cale said, through the merchant quarter. Less attention. They took back streets and alleys, avoiding the main roads. Cale knew the city better than Lyra expected, navigating like he'd spent time here before. Maybe he had. Her family's house sat on the edge of the noble district, not quite grand enough to be among the elite, but pretending hard. Lyra's stomach churned as they approached. Wait here, Cale said, dismounting near a side entrance. This is my house. And if your father's posted guards, I'd rather know before we walk in. He disappeared around the corner. Lyra waited, every nerve on edge, half expecting trackers to pour out of the shadows. Cale returned a few minutes later. 2 guards at the front, none at the servants' entrance. We can get in that way. How do you know where the servants' entrance is? I pay attention. They left the horses in an alley and approached the house on foot. The servants' entrance was exactly where Cale said, a narrow door half hidden behind overgrown ivy. It was unlocked. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Lyra led the way through familiar corridors, her heart pounding. Everything looked the same. The worn carpets, the fading portraits on the walls, the smell of old wood and older money. Her mother's room was on the 2nd floor. Lyra climbed the stairs slowly, Cale a shadow behind her. At the door, she paused. I should go in alone, she whispered. Cale nodded. I'll be right here. Lyra pushed the door open. The room was dark except for a single lamp burning low. Her mother lay in the bed, so thin she was barely a shape under the covers. A woman Lyra didn't recognize sat in a chair beside her. A nurse, probably. Who? The nurse started standing. It's all right, Lyra said quietly. I'm her daughter. The nurse looked uncertain, but something in Lyra's face must have convinced her. She gathered her things and left, closing the door softly behind her. Lyra approached the bed. Her mother's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and ragged. She looked like a stranger, this fragile, fading woman who'd once seemed so vibrant. Mother, Lyra whispered, taking her hand. Her mother's eyes fluttered open. For a moment there was no recognition. Then understanding dawned and tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. Lyra, oh my girl, I'm here. I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I... No. Her mother's grip was weak but insistent. Don't apologize. You did what I never could. I didn't know you were this sick. Father never told me how bad. Your father tells you what serves him. She coughed, the sound wet and terrible. I'm glad you ran. Glad you're free. I'm not free. I'm just somewhere else. Her mother's eyes searched her face. Are you safe? Lyra thought about the fortress, about Marta's rough kindness and training with Kael and the way she'd started to feel like maybe she belonged somewhere. Yes, she said. I'm safe. Good. That's all I wanted, for you to be safe and happy. I should have visited sooner. I should have. You're here now. That's what matters. Her mother's breathing was getting worse. There's something I need to tell you. About your grandmother. About the magic she taught you. Mother, rest. We can talk later. There isn't a later, sweet girl. Another cough. Your grandmother was powerful, more than you know. And that power is in you. Your father feared it, tried to suppress it by marrying you off young, keeping you small. But you're not small. You never were. Lyra's throat tightened. I don't understand. You will. When the time comes, you'll understand. Her mother's eyes were closing again. Promise me you won't let him break you. Promise me you'll fight. I promise. I love you, Lyra. Always have. Always will. Her grip went slack. For a horrible moment, Lyra thought she'd died right there, but her chest still rose and fell, barely, her breathing quieter now. The door crashed open. Lyra spun around. Her father stood in the doorway, 2 guards behind him, his face purple with rage. You! He snarled. How dare you show your face here after what you've done? Lyra stood, placing herself between him and her mother. I came to see her, that's all. That's all? Marcus Vale stalked into the room. You humiliated this family, destroyed our alliance, cost us everything, and you think you can just waltz back in like nothing happened? I needed to see my mother. Your mother is dying because of you. The stress of your little rebellion. That's not true. Guards, seize her. The guards moved forward. Lyra's hand went to the knife at her belt. Then Kael stepped into the room. He didn't say anything, didn't have to. The guards stopped dead, their faces going pale. Alpha King, one of them stammered. Marcus turned, and for the first time Lyra saw fear flicker across his face. What are you doing here? Leaving, Kael said calmly. With her. She's my daughter. You have no claim. I have every claim. Kael's voice was soft, dangerous. She came to me for protection. I granted it. That makes her mine to protect. This is outrageous. The council will hear of this. Tell them, I don't care. Kael held out his hand to Lyra. She took it, her fingers trembling. Marcus stepped forward. If you walk out that door with him, you're no longer my daughter. You understand? You'll have nothing. No family, no name, no inheritance. Lyra looked at her mother, still breathing in that terrible, shallow way. Then at her father, this man who'd tried to sell her future for his own gain. I already have nothing from you, she said. I've had nothing for years. She walked out with Kael, the guards parting to let them through. They made it to the horses before the shouting started behind them. Lyra mounted quickly, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the reins. Ride, Kael said. Now! They galloped through the streets, the city blurring around them. Lyra didn't look back. Couldn't. If she did, she'd see everything she was leaving behind, and the weight of it might crush her. They didn't stop until they were miles outside the city, the horses lathered and heaving. Kael pulled up near an old way station, long abandoned. Lyra dismounted and made it 3 steps before her legs gave out. She sank to the ground, her whole body shaking. Kael was beside her in an instant. Breathe, just breathe. I can't, he said. Your mother told you to fight, so fight. Lyra looked up at him through tears she didn't remember shedding. How? I just lost everything. No, Kael said fiercely. You lost nothing that mattered, and you gained something they can never take away. What? Your choice, your voice, your strength. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses. You walked into that house terrified and walked out unbroken. That's not nothing. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're alive. His thumb brushed away a tear. And being alive means you get to decide what comes next. They stayed like that for a long moment, Lyra kneeling in the dirt with Kael's hands anchoring her to something solid, something real. When she finally pulled away, her breathing had steadied. The shaking had stopped. We should keep moving, she said. My father will send people. Let him try. They rode through the night, pushing the horses as hard as they dared. By the time they saw the mountains rising ahead, dawn was breaking pink and gold across the sky. Lyra had never been so grateful to see those jagged peaks in her life. But as they approached the fortress, something was wrong. Smoke rose from beyond the walls, and when the gates opened, Marta rushed out, her face ashen. "Thank the skies you're back," she said. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Kyle asked. "The kind with 100 armed men flying Koro banners, camped half a mile from our gates. They arrived an hour ago." Marta looked at Lyra. "They're demanding we hand you over, and they're not asking nicely." Patron. He'd come for her. Lyra's blood went cold. Kyle's expression hardened into something deadly. "How many men do we have?" 40, maybe 50 if we armed the stable hands." "Not enough for a fight." "No," Marta agreed. "Not for a fight, but maybe enough for a standoff." Kale looked at Lyra. "This is your choice. We can try to hold them off, negotiate, or I go to him," Lyra finished. "Save everyone the bloodshed." "That's not what I was going to say." "But it's what you were thinking." "No." Kale's voice was hard. "What I was thinking is that I should have killed him when I had the chance, and what comes next is going to be loud." He turned to Marta. "Get everyone inside the walls, bar the gates, and bring me my armor." "You're going out there?" Lyra asked. "We both are." Kale looked at her, and something in his eyes made her pulse jump. It's time these people learned what happens when they threaten what's mine. The weight of that word, mine, settled over Lyra like a cloak, and for the first time since running from that cathedral, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like someone worth fighting for. The armor came in pieces, black steel plates etched with silver, a breastplate that had seen battle, vambraces scarred from decades of use. Marta brought them to the armory where Kyle was already strapping on his sword belt, his face set in that cold, focused expression Lyra had come to recognize as his war mask. "You don't have to do this," Lyra said, watching him buckle the chest plate. "I could just—" "Don't!" Kyle's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Don't even finish that sentence. 100 men, Kyle. You said yourself we don't have the numbers. We don't need numbers." He tested the fit of his gauntlets, flexing his fingers. "We need them to understand what they're up against." "Which is?" He looked at her then, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Me. And the fact that I'll burn that entire camp to ash before I let them take you." Marta cleared her throat. "The men are ready. Archers on the walls, swordsmen at the gate. It's not much, but it'll hold for a while." "Good." Kyle picked up his helmet, a brutal thing with a face guard shaped like a snarling wolf. "Keep everyone inside until I give the signal." "And what signal would that be?" Marta asked dryly. "You'll know it when you see it." He started for the door, but Lyra grabbed his arm. "Wait, what am I supposed to do? Just stand here while you're coming with me." "What?" Kyle turned to face her fully. "They came for you. That means you're part of this negotiation whether you want to be or not. I'm not leaving you behind where Petron's men could breach the walls and grab you. So I'm bait. No, you're proof." He handed her a heavy cloak, dark green and lined with fur. "Put this on, and stay close to me. Don't speak unless I tell you to." Lyra wanted to argue, but the look on his face stopped her. This wasn't up for debate. They walked through the fortress together, past guards who nodded grimly and servants who watched with worried faces. When they reached the main gates, Sarah was already there, with a contingent of armed men. "We've got eyes on their camp," she reported. "Patron's in the center tent, surrounded by his personal guard. The rest are foot soldiers, maybe a dozen mounted knights. Archers, 20, positioned on that ridge to the east." Kyle nodded. "If they loose arrows, take out their archers first. Make every shot count." "Yes, sir." The gates creaked open just wide enough for them to pass through. Outside, the morning air was sharp and cold, carrying the smell of campfires and horse sweat. In the distance, Lyra could see the Koro encampment, a sprawl of tents and banners, men moving between them like ants. Her stomach turned. "Breathe," Kale said quietly. "And remember, you're not the woman who ran anymore. You're the woman who survived." They walked down the path from the fortress gates, their boots crunching on gravel. Kael moved like he owned the ground beneath him, every step deliberate and unhurried. Lyra tried to match his confidence, but her heart was racing so fast she thought it might break through her ribs. As they approached the camp, men stopped to stare. Whispers rippled through the ranks. Someone shouted, and suddenly there was movement, soldiers scrambling into formation, weapons being drawn. A man emerged from the center tent. Petron looked exactly as Lyra remembered. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face people called handsome, until you looked too close and saw the cruelty in the set of his mouth. He wore polished armor that had probably never seen real combat, a sword at his hip that was more decoration than weapon. His eyes locked onto Lyra, and she saw rage there. Pure, undiluted rage. "Well," Petron said, his voice carrying across the space between them. "The little runaway returns, and she's brought the mountain savage with her." Kael didn't react to the insult. He just stopped about 20 feet from Petron's line and stood there waiting. "You have something that belongs to me," Petron continued. "I've come to collect her." "She doesn't belong to you," Kael said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "She never did. We had a contract, a marriage agreement signed by her father and the council. A contract she didn't sign. That makes it void." Petron's jaw tightened. "That's not how these things work, Savage. Women don't get to choose. Their families choose for them." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Kael asked. "That she's property to be traded?" "I tell myself that I paid good money for a bride, and I intend to claim what's mine." Lyra felt something snap inside her. Before Kael could stop her, she stepped forward. "I am not yours," she said, her voice shaking but loud. "I will never be yours. You betrayed me with my own sister before we were even married. You think I'd come crawling back to that?" Petron's face darkened. "Mind your tongue, girl. You're speaking of things you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I saw you, both of you. Your sister came to me willingly. She understood her place better than you ever did." The words hit like a physical blow. Lyra had suspected, but hearing it confirmed, that her sister had known exactly what she was doing, had chosen to betray her, made the ground feel unsteady beneath her feet. Kael's hand found hers, warm and solid. The touch anchored her. "This conversation is over," Kael said. "Take your men and leave. Lyra stays here." "Under what authority?" Petron demanded. "You have no claim to her, no legal right to keep her from her lawful fiancé." "I have the right of protection. She sought sanctuary. I granted it." "Sanctuary?" Petron laughed, the sound ugly. "You can't just declare sanctuary whenever you feel like it. The council can take it up with me personally if they have an issue." Kael's voice went colder. "But I'd advise against it." Petron's hand moved to his sword. Around them, his men tensed. "You think you can threaten me?" Petron said. "I have 100 men here. You're alone except for whatever ragtag garrison you've got hiding behind those walls. This isn't a fight you can win." "I've won fights with worse odds." "Then you're a fool." "Maybe." Kael's grip on Lyra's hand tightened slightly. "But I'm a fool who keeps what's mine." That word again. Mine. It sent heat through Lyra's chest despite everything. Petron took a step forward. "She's not yours. She's mine. The council approved the match. Her father agreed. You're interfering in legal business, and that's grounds for..." "For what?" Kael interrupted. "War? You want to start a war over a woman who doesn't want you? I want what I paid for." "Then ask for your money back, because you're not getting her." The tension ratcheted so high Lyra thought the air might crack. Petron's men were shifting, hands on weapons, waiting for the order to attack. On the walls behind them, she could see Kael's archers drawing their bows. This was going to turn into a bloodbath. And then an idea hit her, reckless, insane, probably suicidal. But it was the only card she had left to play. "Wait," Lyra said. Both men turned to look at her. "There's a way to settle this," she continued, her heart hammering. "Without violence." "Lyra," Kael said quietly. A warning. She ignored him. "Lord Petron, you claim I'm bound to you by contract, but that contract was negotiated under false pretenses. You were unfaithful before the wedding even took place." "That's not..." "Let me finish." Lyra pulled her hand from Kael's, stepping forward on her own. "Under council law, a marriage contract can be voided if one party proves deception or prior commitment. Isn't that right? Petron's eyes narrowed. What are you playing at? I'm saying that the contract is void because I'm already promised to someone else. The words hung in the air like smoke. Kael went very, very still beside her. That's a lie, Petron said flatly. Is it? Lyra forced herself to meet his eyes. The Alpha King has been courting me for weeks. Why do you think I ran? I couldn't marry you and my heart belonged to another. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want. But if you push this, you're not just fighting some runaway girl. You're fighting the man she's chosen. Lyra's voice grew stronger. And I don't think the council will back you in a conflict with him over a woman who clearly doesn't want you. Petron looked like he wanted to strangle her, but she could see the calculation in his eyes, the political arithmetic he was running. Fighting Kyle Draven over a marriage contract wasn't worth the cost, especially if there was even a chance her story was true. This is ridiculous, Petron said. The Alpha King doesn't court anyone. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows a lot of things that aren't true, Lyra shot back. Petron turned to Kael. Is she telling the truth? Have you been courting her? Kael was silent for a long moment. Lyra could feel him weighing options, calculating consequences. She'd just painted them both into a corner, and if he denied it now, Petron would drag her away, and everything would be for nothing. Then Kael stepped forward, his posture changing from defensive to something else, something possessive. Yes, he said simply. She's mine. And if you touch her, I'll tear your throat out with my bare hands. The casual brutality of the threat made Petron flinch. This is insane, Petron said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. The council will do what they always do, Kael interrupted. They'll weigh the costs and make the practical choice. And practically speaking, going to war with me over a woman who ran from you in front of half the city, that's not a fight they'll back. Petron looked between them, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. If this is true, then you should have declared your intentions formally, through proper channels. I'm declaring them now, Kael said. Consider this your formal notice. Lyra Vale is under my protection. She's choosing me. And if you or anyone else tries to interfere, I'll consider it an act of aggression. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Petron stared at them for another long moment, then spun on his heel. Break camp, he shouted to his men. We're leaving. There was confusion among the soldiers, muttered protests. But Petron's lieutenant started barking orders, and slowly, reluctantly, the camp began to dismantle. Lyra didn't move. Couldn't. She'd just lied to a noble lord in front of 100 witnesses. More than that, she'd claimed the Alpha King was courting her, forced him to back her story, and committed them both to a narrative that would spread like wildfire. Kael turned to her once Petron was out of earshot. That was either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever done, he said. I'm leaning towards stupid. Walk with me, now. He started back toward the fortress. Lyra followed, her legs shaking. They didn't speak until they were through the gates, until the heavy doors had closed behind them and they were alone in the courtyard. Then Kael rounded on her. What were you thinking? His voice wasn't angry exactly, more shocked. You just told Petron I'm courting you. Do you have any idea what that means? It means he can't force me to marry him without starting a political nightmare. It also means every noble family in the region is going to be watching us, questioning it, demanding proof. Then we'll give them proof. Kael stared at her. You can't be serious. Why not? Lyra's voice rose. You said it yourself. I'm not going back to him. And my father disowned me, so I have no family protection. The only way I stay safe is if I'm untouchable. And being courted by you makes me untouchable. You're asking me to lie to the entire council. I'm asking you to protect me the only way that will actually work. Lyra stepped closer. You said I was yours. You said it in front of Petron and his army. Either you meant it or you didn't. I meant... Kael stopped, his jaw working. I meant I'd keep you safe, not that I'd... This is different. How? Because if we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? The lie becomes real. We have to sell it, maintain it, live it. Then we live it. Lyra, I'm not afraid of you, Kael. Her voice was steady now, certain. I'm afraid of going back to that life. I'm afraid of being powerless. But you? No. Kale looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Not the runaway bride who'd thrown herself into his carriage, but the woman she'd become in the weeks since. "If we do this," he said slowly, "it has to be convincing. That means public appearances, formal courtship rituals, eventually, probably marriage." Lyra's heart stuttered. "Marriage? That's where courtship leads, you know that." "Right. Yes, of course." She was babbling. She forced herself to stop. "And would that be, would it be real or just for show?" Kale's expression was unreadable. "I don't do things halfway. If I marry you, it'll be real." The weight of that statement settled between them. "Okay," Lyra said. "Okay? Okay." She took a breath. "Let's do it. Let's make them believe it." For a moment, Kyle just looked at her. Then slowly, he smiled. A real smile. Not the calculated one he used for politics. "You're going to be trouble," he said. "Probably. I'm counting on it." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture surprisingly gentle. Lyra's breath caught. "We start tomorrow," Kale said. "I'll send word to the council that I'm formally courting you. That'll give us some legitimacy. And tonight? Tonight you rest? Because once this starts, everyone will be watching, and we can't afford mistakes." He left her standing in the courtyard, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened. She'd lied her way into a courtship with the most powerful man in the region. She'd forced his hand, dragged him into a political mess, and committed them both to a path with no clear end. But she wasn't being dragged back to Petran. She wasn't being sold off or silenced or erased. She was choosing her own fate. Finally, even if that fate terrified her. That night, Lyra couldn't eat. She sat in the great hall picking at her food while Marta watched with knowing eyes. "You've got that look," Marta said finally. "What look?" "The one that says you've done something dramatic, and you're not sure if it was genius or suicide." Lyra pushed her plate away. "Probably suicide." "The courtship story? You heard?" "Everyone heard. Half the fortress is placing bets on how long before the council shows up demanding proof." Lyra groaned and put her head in her hands. "This was a mistake. I panicked, and now I've trapped him in some ridiculous lie." "He didn't have to go along with it," Marta interrupted. "Kael's not the kind of man who does anything he doesn't want to do. If he backed your story, he had his reasons." What reasons could he possibly— "Use your head, girl. He's been watching you like a hawk watches prey since you got here, training you personally, riding into your family's house to pull you out, threatening a noble lord in front of his entire army." Marta leaned forward. "Men like Kyle don't do that for just anyone." Lyra's pulse quickened. "You think he actually— I think he sees something in you worth protecting. Whether that's attraction or respect or something else, I don't know. But it's real. Or he's just being strategic. I'm a convenient political pawn." "If you were a pawn, he'd have sent you back to your father the first day." Lyra wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that maybe, possibly, Kale felt something more than obligation. But wanting something didn't make it true. "What do I do?" she asked. "You play the part," Marta said. "You be the woman he's claiming to court, and you watch him, really watch him. See if his actions match his words. And if they don't, then you run again. But this time, you'll know how." Lyra went to bed with Marta's words echoing in her head. She stared at the ceiling, trying to imagine what came next. Public appearances, formal courtship, the council's scrutiny, marriage. The word alone made her stomach flip. A knock at the door startled her upright. "It's me," Kale's voice called. Lyra grabbed a robe and opened the door. Kale stood there still in his armor, though he'd removed the helmet. He looked exhausted. "We have a problem," he said. "Another one?" "Your mother. She sent a messenger." Lyra's heart stopped. "Is she—" "She's alive, but she's asking for you, says it's urgent." "I can't go back there. My father—" "She's not at your father's house. She's in the city, at a healing temple. Apparently she left on her own after you visited." Kale handed her a sealed letter. "This is from her." Lyra broke the seal with shaking hands. The handwriting was weak, barely legible, but unmistakably her mother's. My dearest Lyra, I don't have much time, so I'll be brief. What I told you about your grandmother's magic, it's more important than I made it sound. You need to come to the temple. There's something I must give you before I go, something that will protect you from what's coming. Trust the Alpha King. He's not what people think. Neither are you. Please come, quickly. I love you. Lyra read it twice, her hands trembling. It could be a trap, Kael said quietly. Your father could be using her to lure you out. I know. But you want to go anyway. She's dying, Kael. If this is her last request, then we go together, now, before anyone else knows about it. It's the middle of the night. Exactly. Less chance of being seen. He stepped back. Get dressed, something warm. We leave in 10 minutes. They rode through darkness, the city silent and sleeping around them. Kael knew shortcuts, back alleys, routes that avoided guard patrols. He'd clearly done this before, moved through the city unseen. The healing temple sat on the edge of the temple district, a modest building with a red door and healing symbols carved into the stone. Kael dismounted first, scanning the street for threats. It looks clear, he said, but stay close. Inside, the temple was quiet except for the soft sounds of people breathing, sleeping, suffering in the darkness. A priestess appeared, elderly and kind-faced. You're here for Lady Vale? She asked quietly. Yes, Lyra said. This way, quickly. She doesn't have long. They followed her through narrow corridors to a small room at the back. Lyra's mother lay on a simple cot, her breathing labored. But when she saw Lyra, her eyes brightened. You came, she whispered. Of course I came. Lyra knelt beside the bed, taking her mother's frail hand. Her mother's gaze shifted to Kael. So it's true. You've chosen him. It's complicated. No, it's simple. Her mother smiled weakly. He's the one. I can see it. Mother, you're not making sense. Listen to me. Her grip tightened with surprising strength. Your grandmother left you something. I've kept it hidden all these years, waiting for the right time. She gestured to a small box on the bedside table. Take it. Open it later when you're safe. Lyra picked up the box. It was heavy, ornate, locked with a mechanism she didn't recognize. What is it? Your inheritance, your power. Her mother's breathing was getting worse. The Vale family has carried magic in our blood for generations. Your father tried to breed it out, to suppress it. But it's in you, stronger than ever. That box contains the key to unlocking it. I don't understand. You will. Her mother's eyes were closing. When the time comes, you'll understand everything. Just promise me you'll use it. Promise me you'll be everything I couldn't be. I promise. Her mother smiled one last time. Then her breathing slowed, steadied, and finally stopped. Lyra felt the loss like a physical blow. She stayed kneeling there, holding her mother's hand, tears streaming down her face. Kael's hand settled on her shoulder. We need to go, now. I can't just leave her. The priestesses will care for her. But if your father finds out you were here, shouts erupted from somewhere in the temple, boots on stone, men's voices, angry and commanding. Too late, Kael muttered. He pulled Lyra to her feet. Back door, move. They ran through the temple, Lyra clutching the box to her chest. Behind them, the shouts grew louder, her father's voice demanding to know where she was. Kael found a window, kicked it open, and helped her through. They dropped into an alley, the impact jarring but manageable. The horses are 2 streets over, Kael said. Run. They ran. Men poured out of the temple behind them, her father's guards, maybe a dozen of them. Lyra's lungs burned, her legs screaming in protest, but she didn't slow down. They made it to the horses. Kael boosted her into the saddle, then mounted his own. Stop them! Marcus Vale's voice echoed down the street. Arrows whistled through the air. One struck the wall beside Lyra's head, sending stone chips flying. Ride, Kael shouted. They galloped through the city streets, arrows chasing them, guards shouting. Lyra bent low over her horse's neck, the box pressed between her body and the saddle. They burst out of the city gates just as dawn broke, the sky turning pink and gold. Behind them, her father's men gave up the chase, their horses spent. Lyra didn't slow down until they were miles away, until the mountains rose ahead and the fortress came into view. Only then did she let herself breathe. Kael pulled up beside her. You all right? My mother's dead. My father's trying to kill me, and I have no idea what's in this box. Lyra looked at him. So, no, not really. Fair enough. They rode the rest of the way in silence. Back at the fortress, Marta took one look at Lyra's face and pulled her into a fierce hug. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. What's in the box? I don't know yet. In her room, Lyra sat on the bed and examined the box more carefully. The lock was complex, no keyhole she could see. Just a series of symbols that looked like the ones her grandmother had taught her, the old magic, the kind most people had forgotten. She pressed them in the sequence her grandmother had made her memorize as a child. The box clicked open. Inside was a pendant, silver, set with a dark stone that seemed to absorb light, and beneath it a letter in her grandmother's handwriting. Lyra, if you're reading this, your mother is gone, and you're finally free to become who you were meant to be. The pendant holds our family's power, centuries of magic, compressed and waiting. When you wear it, you'll be able to access abilities your father spent your whole life trying to suppress. You are not weak. You never were. You are a veil. And we are survivors. Wear this, use it, and never let anyone make you small again. Lyra lifted the pendant from the box. The moment it touched her skin, she felt something surge through her. Warmth, power, a sense of rightness she'd never experienced before. She put it on. The world shifted. Colors became brighter, sounds sharper. She could feel the fortress around her, every person in it, their emotions like tangible things she could almost touch. And beneath it all, something else, something wild and ancient and entirely hers. A knock at the door made her jump. Lyra? Kael's voice. We need to talk. She opened the door. Kael stood there, but his expression was strange, wary, almost cautious. What? Lyra asked. You're sent, he said. It's different, stronger. What did you do? Lyra touched the pendant. I opened the box. Kael's eyes went to the pendant, and something flickered across his face. Recognition. And something that looked like fear. Where did you get that? His voice was very quiet. My grandmother. Why? Because I know what that is. Kael stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. That's a bloodstone. They're supposed to be extinct. The council destroyed them all 50 years ago because they were too dangerous. Dangerous how? They amplify magic, make it uncontrollable. People who wore them went mad with power. I feel fine. For now. Kael looked at her seriously. Lyra, you need to take that off before someone else sees it. No. This isn't a request, and this isn't a discussion. Lyra met his eyes. My grandmother left this for me. My mother died protecting it. I'm not taking it off because you're scared of what it might do. I'm not scared of what it might do to you. I'm scared of what the council will do when they find out you have it. Then we don't tell them. They'll know. They'll feel it. Let them. Lyra's hand closed around the pendant. I've spent my entire life being powerless. Being told what to do, who to marry, how to live. If this gives me power, I'm keeping it. Kael stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. All right, he said. But when the council comes, and they will come, you stand behind me. Understood? Why would they come? As if in answer, a horn blew from the walls. 3 short blasts, the signal for visitors. Kael's expression darkened. Because they're already here. From the battlements, Lyra could see them. 3 carriages bearing council seals, flanked by armed guards in ceremonial armor that still looked plenty functional. They moved with the unhurried confidence of people who expected doors to open for them. How many? Kael asked Sarah, who'd rushed up to join them. 15 guards, maybe 20, plus whoever's in those carriages. Sarah squinted. I count at least 3 council members based on the banners. Which ones? Corvain, Delmar, and... She paused. Your uncle. Kael's jaw tightened. Of course he came. Your uncle's on the council? Lyra asked. Was on the council before he decided power in the capital was more important than family. Kael turned from the wall. Get everyone inside. Bar the secondary gates, but leave the main entrance open. I want this to look like a diplomatic visit. not a siege. Is it diplomatic? Sarah asked. That depends on what they want. What they wanted became clear the moment the carriages rolled into the courtyard. The first man out was elderly, thin, dressed in council robes so heavy with embroidery they probably weighed more than he did. Councillor Corvain, Lyra recognized him from state functions her father had dragged her to. The second was younger, sharp-eyed, with the build of someone who'd been a soldier before politics claimed him. Delmar. The third made Lyra's stomach drop. He looked like Kyle, or what Kyle might look like in 20 years. Same height, same build, but with gray threading through his dark hair and lines carved deep around his mouth. The resemblance was undeniable. Thorn Draven, Kael said quietly beside her. My father's brother. The one who testified against him at the trial. What trial? Later. Kael started down the stairs. Stay close and let me do the talking. They met the council delegation in the Great Hall. Kael had changed into formal clothes, still all black, but tailored and expensive, the kind that announced status without shouting. Lyra wore a dress Marta had found, deep green with silver threading that matched the pendant hidden beneath her collar. The pendant pulsed against her skin, warm and insistent. She could feel the council members like pressure points in the air, their suspicion, their calculation, Thorn's barely concealed contempt. Nephew, Thorn said, his voice smooth as oil. It's been too long. Not long enough, Kael replied. What brings the council to my door? Disturbing reports, Corvain said, settling into a chair without being invited. About your involvement with the Vale girl. Her name is Lyra. Miss Vale, then. Corvain's eyes found her, cold and assessing. We've heard claims that you're courting her. Claims that have, shall we say, complicated several ongoing negotiations. What negotiations? Lyra asked before she could stop herself. Kael shot her a warning look, but Corvain smiled. Your father's debts, for one. Lord Patron was willing to absorb them as part of the marriage settlement. Now that settlement is void, and your family faces bankruptcy. That's not my problem, Lyra said. Perhaps not. But it becomes the council's problem when political alliances collapse over a runaway bride. I didn't run to cause problems. I ran because the man I was supposed to marry was unfaithful before we even reached the altar. Delmar leaned forward. Can you prove that? I saw them. Him and my sister. Hearsay, Thorn said dismissively. A woman's word against a lord's. The council can hardly overturn a marriage contract based on that. The council can do whatever serves its interests, Kael said. You proved that when you executed my father on trumped-up charges. Thorn's expression didn't change. Your father was tried and convicted of treason. The evidence was overwhelming. The evidence was manufactured, but we're not here to relitigate the past. Kael crossed his arms. State your business or leave. Corvain cleared his throat. We're here to verify the nature of your relationship with Miss Vale. If you're truly courting her, there are protocols, formal declarations, dowry negotiations. I've made my intentions clear. What more do you need? Proof, Delmar said bluntly. Proof that this isn't just a ploy to interfere with council business. What kind of proof? The kind that comes with formal betrothal, signed contracts, public ceremonies. Corvain's smile was thin. You claim to be courting her. Fine. Then formalize it. Make it official. Lyra felt the trap closing. They were forcing Kael's hand, making him either back down or commit fully to the lie. And if I don't? Kael asked. Then we assume this is a ruse, Thorn said, and we require Miss Vale to honor her original contract with House Coro. She can't honor a contract she never signed. Her father signed on her behalf. That's legally binding. Not if she was coerced. Was she? Corvain looked at Lyra. Were you coerced, Miss Vale? Or did you simply change your mind when a better offer presented itself? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Lyra felt heat rise in her cheeks. I was never given a choice, she said. My father arranged the marriage without consulting me. I learned about it 3 months before the wedding. Many marriages are arranged, Delmar said. That doesn't make them invalid. This one was built on lies. Patran was unfaithful. My father knew and didn't care. I was being sold like livestock to cover his debts. Strong words, Thorn said. But without evidence, I have evidence. The words came out before Lyra could think. Letters. Between my father and Petran. Discussing the arrangement, the money, Petran's other relationships. It was a bluff. She had no such letters. But the pendant pulsed against her skin, and suddenly she could feel the truth, see it in the way Corvain's expression shifted, how Delmar's eyes narrowed. They believed her. Or at least, they weren't sure she was lying. Interesting, Corvain said slowly. We'd like to see those letters. They're in a safe location. I'll produce them when necessary. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works, Kael interrupted. You came here demanding proof of our relationship. Lyra's offering proof of why her original engagement was invalid. Either accept her terms or admit you're just here to strong-arm her back into a contract that never should have existed. Thorn stood abruptly. You're playing a dangerous game, nephew. The council has been lenient with you, allowed you to maintain your holdings despite your father's crimes. But that leniency isn't infinite. Is that a threat? It's a reminder. You exist at the council's pleasure. Don't forget that. Kael stepped forward, and something in his posture changed, became predatory, dangerous. The only reason the council tolerates my existence is because they're terrified of what would happen if they tried to remove me. I control the mountain passes. I command loyalty from half the northern packs. And I have enough dirt on council dealings to bury every person in that chamber. His voice dropped. So no, uncle, I don't exist at anyone's pleasure but my own. The room went silent. Corvain cleared his throat. Gentlemen, let's remember we're here to resolve a matter diplomatically. Then here's my diplomatic resolution, Kael said. Lyra stays with me. We'll formalize the courtship according to council protocol if that's what it takes. But she's not going back to Petran, and she's not being forced into any marriage she doesn't choose. And the letters, Delmar asked, will be produced at the appropriate time. Corvain studied them both for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. We'll accept a formal betrothal contract, to be signed within the week and presented to the council for approval. Agreed, Kael said. But understand this, Corvain continued. If we discover you've been dishonest, if this is merely a scheme to disrupt council business, there will be consequences. For both of you. Understood. The council members gathered their things to leave, but as they filed out, Thorn lingered. A word, nephew, in private. Kael hesitated, then nodded. Lyra, wait outside. She didn't want to leave him alone with that man, but she also knew pushing wouldn't help. She stepped into the corridor, closing the door behind her. Through the heavy wood, she could hear voices, too muffled to make out words, but the tone was clear. Anger. Threats. Kael's responses were quieter, more controlled, then silence. The door opened. Thorn emerged, his face unreadable. He looked at Lyra as he passed. You're in over your head, girl, he said. Whatever game you think you're playing, it won't end well. He left before she could respond. Inside, Kael stood by the window, his shoulders tense. What did he say? Lyra asked. That if I go through with this betrothal, he'll make sure the council investigates every aspect of it, looking for cracks, proof it's false. Kael turned to face her. He knows we're lying. He just can't prove it yet. Then we make sure he never can. That means making this real, Lyra. Full betrothal contract, public announcements. Eventually, marriage. I know. And you're still willing to do this? Lyra touched the pendant through her dress. She could feel its power humming beneath her fingertips, and with it, a clarity she'd never had before. Yes, she said. I'm willing. Kael crossed the room to stand in front of her. Why? You barely know me. This isn't the life you wanted. I wanted choice, and this is me choosing. She met his eyes. You've protected me when no one else would. You've given me space to become stronger. Maybe that's not love, but it's more than anyone else ever offered. Something shifted in Kael's expression. And what if it becomes more than that? Lyra's breath caught. What? What if it's already more than that? He reached up, his fingers brushing her cheek. What if I'm not pretending? The world narrowed to the space between them. His hand on her face, the intensity in his eyes, the way her pulse jumped at his touch. Kael... The door burst open. Sarah stood there, breathing hard. We have a problem. Riders approaching from the south, fast, and they're not flying council banners. Kale's hand dropped. How many? 24, maybe more, and they're moving like they mean violence. They ran to the battlements. In the distance, dust rose from the road, riders pushing their horses hard, weapons visible even from here. Petran, Lyra breathed. He waited until the council left, Kale said. Smart. If he takes you now, he can claim you came willingly, that the betrothal was forced. What do we do? We hold the walls. Kyle turned to Sarah. Get everyone armed. Archers on the battlements, swordsmen at the gate. If they try to breach, they won't breach, Sarah said. Not with the gates barred, unless someone opens them from inside. The words hung heavy. Lyra looked at Kyle. You think there's a traitor? I think Petron's desperate and desperate men buy loyalty where they can. Kale started for the stairs. Lock down the fortress. Trust no one. The next hour was chaos. Guards rushing to positions, servants being evacuated to the inner keep, weapons being distributed. Lyra found herself in the armory with Marta, who was checking inventory with grim efficiency. Can we hold? Lyra asked. Against 24? Yes, against more? Marta shrugged. Depends on how long they're willing to siege. Petron won't siege. He'll want this over quickly. Then he'll try something clever, and clever usually means betrayal. A shout from the courtyard made them both freeze, then the sound of steel on steel, fighting, inside the walls. Lyra ran out to find chaos, guards fighting guards, blood on the cobblestones. Someone had opened the secondary gate. Petron's men poured through. Lyra spotted Kyle across the courtyard, already engaged with 3 attackers. He moved like water and death combined, his sword a blur. But there were too many. She pulled the knife from her belt, the one Marta had given her, and ran forward. A man grabbed her from behind. She reacted without thinking, exactly as Marta had taught her. Elbow to the ribs, knife up and back. The man screamed and let go. Lyra spun to face him, knife raised, and saw shock in his eyes, not fear. Shock that she'd fought back. Good. She stabbed again, aiming for his shoulder. He went down. Lyra! Kale's voice. Get inside! Not a chance! She saw Marta engaging 2 of Petron's soldiers with a ferocity that belied her age. Saw Sarah take down a man twice her size. Saw the fortress staff, servants and stable hands and cooks, fighting with whatever they could grab. These people were fighting for her, bleeding for her. She wasn't going to hide while they did. The pendant grew hot against her skin, and suddenly she could feel everything, every person in the courtyard, their fear and anger and determination. And beneath it, something else. Power. Raw and waiting. She didn't know how she knew what to do. She just did. Lyra grabbed the pendant, pulled it out from under her collar, and let it blaze in the morning light. The effect was immediate. Petron's men closest to her stumbled, their movements suddenly sluggish. Her own people seemed to move faster, stronger. Across the courtyard, Kyle's eyes found hers. Understanding flashed across his face. Push them back, he shouted. Drive them out! The tide of battle shifted. What had been an even fight became a rout. Petron's men retreated toward the gate, then through it, scrambling for their horses. And then Lyra saw him. Petron himself, dismounting near the chaos, surrounded by his personal guard. His eyes locked onto her and his face twisted with rage. You think you've won? He shouted across the courtyard. You think running to him saves you? I'm not running anymore, Lyra called back. Then you'll die here. Petron drew his sword. I came to claim what's mine, and I'm not leaving without you. He started forward, his guards moving to flank him. Kyle intercepted, his sword rising to block Petron's strike. They engaged in a flurry of blows, Kyle's skill against Petron's rage. It wasn't even close. Kyle disarmed Petron in 4 moves, sending his sword clattering across the stones. Then he had Petron on his knees, blade at his throat. Do it, Petron snarled. Kill me. Prove you're the savage everyone says you are. Kyle's blade pressed closer. Blood welled where steel met skin. Kale, Lyra said quietly. Don't. He tried to take you. He attacked my home. And if you kill him, the council will have their excuse to destroy you. She walked forward slowly. He's not worth it. Kael's jaw worked. For a moment, Lyra thought he might do it anyway, might end Petron right there in the courtyard. Then he lowered his blade. "Get out," Kael said. "Take your men and go. And if you ever come near her again, I won't show restraint." Petron stumbled to his feet, his face purple with humiliation. "This isn't over." "Yes," Kael said quietly. "It is." Petron and his remaining men retreated. The gates closed behind them with a finality that felt like an ending. The courtyard was silent except for the groans of wounded and the heavy breathing of people who'd just fought for their lives. Lyra looked around at the carnage, at the blood and the bodies and the people who'd stood with her when it mattered. Then she looked at Kael. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Pride, maybe. Or something deeper. "You fought," he said. "I learned from the best. You also used the pendant. Everyone saw." Lyra realized he was right. The bloodstone still hung visible against her chest, still glowing faintly with power. Every person in the courtyard was staring at it. "Let them see," she said. "Let them know I'm not defenseless anymore." Kael smiled. A real smile, fierce and proud. "No, you're definitely not defenseless." Sarah approached, favoring her left side where blood darkened her shirt. "We found the traitor, one of the gate guards. Petron offered him gold." "Where is he?" Kael asked. "In the cells, waiting for your judgment." Kael looked at Lyra. "This is your fight as much as mine. What do you think we should do with him?" The question caught her off guard. He was asking her opinion, treating her like an equal. "Make him pay back whatever Petron gave him," Lyra said, "then exile him. Death would make him a martyr to anyone else considering betrayal. But exile, that's a living reminder of what happens when you break trust." Kael considered this, then nodded. "Done. See to it, Sarah." As the sun climbed higher, the fortress began the grim work of cleaning up. Bodies were moved. Wounded were treated. The gate guard was stripped of his weapons and coin and driven out into the wilderness alone. Lyra helped where she could, binding wounds, carrying water, offering quiet words to people who'd fought beside her. Nobody treated her like a runaway bride anymore. Nobody whispered or judged. They looked at her like she belonged. That night, they gathered in the great hall. Every person who'd fought was there, along with those who'd hidden the children and elderly during the battle. Marta had somehow managed to prepare a feast despite everything. Kael stood at the head of the table, raising his cup. To those who stood, to those who bled, to those who proved that this fortress is more than stone and steel, it's family. Everyone drank. Then Kael turned to Lyra. "And to the woman who reminded me what we're protecting. What's worth fighting for?" Every eye in the hall turned to her. Lyra felt her face heat, but she stood anyway, raising her own cup. "To second chances," she said, "and to finding home in unexpected places." The hall erupted in cheers. Later, after the food was gone and people had drifted off to tend wounds or find sleep, Lyra found Kael on the battlements. He stood looking out over the mountains, still wearing his blood-stained shirt. "You should clean up," she said, joining him. "In a minute." He glanced at her. "You handled yourself well today." "I stabbed a man." "You defended yourself. There's a difference." "Is there?" Lyra looked down at her hands. They'd stopped shaking hours ago, but she could still feel the knife's impact, the resistance of flesh. "I keep thinking about it, how easy it was." "That's normal. First time is always strange." "When was your first time?" "I was 12. Bandits attacked our caravan. I killed one with a rock." Kael's voice was flat, matter of fact. "My father said it meant I was ready for real training." "That's young." "That was life in the mountains. Still is, in a lot of places." He turned to face her fully. "But you're changing that, just by being here, by fighting." "I don't feel like I'm changing anything." "You are. The people who fought today, they didn't fight for me. They fought for you. Because you're one of them now." "I'm not, though. I'm still an outsider, a runaway with no family and a stolen pendant." "The pendant your grandmother left you. That's not stealing." Kael reached out, his fingers brushing the bloodstone where it rested against her collar. "And you're not an outsider. Not anymore." His hand lingered. Lyra's breath caught. "Kael, I meant what I said earlier, about not pretending." His gray eyes held hers. I've been alone a long time, surrounded by people but alone. And then you threw yourself into my carriage covered in blood and terror, and everything shifted. That's not romantic. No, but it's true. His thumb traced her jaw. You're brave and reckless, and you fight like you've got nothing to lose. That terrifies me. And it's the most alive I've felt in years. Lyra's heart was racing. The council expects a betrothal contract. They'll get one. And then marriage. Eventually. Is that what you want? Kale smiled slowly. What I want is you, however I can have you. If that's a political arrangement that becomes real, fine. If it's something else, even better. And if I want more than arrangement, then we figure it out together. He kissed her then, soft at first, testing. When she didn't pull away, he deepened it, his hand sliding into her hair. Lyra had been kissed before. Chaste, formal kisses from Petran that had felt like obligations. This was nothing like that. This was fire and hunger and the promise of something she'd never let herself imagine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. The council's going to make this complicated, he said. Let them try. They will. They'll investigate. Question everyone, look for proof we're lying. Then we give them truth. Lyra pulled back enough to meet his eyes. We make this real. Full betrothal, public ceremony, everything they expect. And after? After we figure out if what we have is worth keeping. Kael laughed, a real, genuine sound she'd never heard from him before. You're assuming I'll let you leave. I'm assuming you'll give me the choice. Always. His expression sobered. That's the difference between me and them. I'll always give you choice. They stood together as night deepened around them, the fortress settling into quiet below. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Council scrutiny. Petran's inevitable retaliation, the mystery of the Bloodstone and what it meant. But tonight, Lyra had what she'd been searching for since the moment she ran from that cathedral. She had power. She had people willing to fight for her. And she had someone who saw her as an equal, not property. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The betrothal contract arrived 3 days later, delivered by council courier with enough wax seals to choke a horse. Lyra sat in Kael's study as he read through it, watching his expression darken with each page. Let me guess, she said. It's worse than expected. They want complete financial disclosure, background investigations into both families. A formal ceremony in the capital, overseen by the council. Kael tossed the contract onto his desk. And this clause here, they want the right to interview household staff, separately. Looking for cracks in the story. Looking for proof we're lying. He rubbed his eyes. This is Thorne's work. He's not going to let this go. Lyra picked up the contract, scanning the dense legal language. Her grandmother's pendant hung warm against her skin, and as she read, she felt something shift, a clarity that cut through the bureaucratic maze. There's a loophole, she said. Where? Here, Section 12. It says the betrothal must be formalized with traditional vows and witnessed by council members. She looked up. But it doesn't specify which tradition. Most people assume they mean council tradition, but technically, we could use mountain pack tradition, Kael finished. His eyes lit up. Which requires only the couple and one witness. No council oversight. Exactly. If we formalize it that way, they can't contest it without invalidating centuries of pack law. Kael stared at her. How did you catch that? I don't know, the pendant, maybe. Ever since I put it on, I see patterns differently. Connections I would have missed before. Lyra touched the bloodstone. It's like my mind works faster. That's what bloodstones do. They amplify natural abilities. If you are always good at seeing loopholes, it makes you better. Kael leaned forward. But if we use pack tradition, we have to do it properly. That means blood oath. Permanent binding. Permanent? As in no annulment, no divorce. What's done is done. His expression was serious. Are you sure you want that? Once we take this step, there's no going back. Lyra thought about the alternative. Months of council scrutiny, investigations, Petran waiting for any excuse to challenge the betrothal. Thought about her father's men still hunting for leverage. Thought about living in constant uncertainty while bureaucrats picked apart their lives. Then she thought about the fortress, about Marta's rough kindness and Sarah's fierce loyalty, about training with Kael each morning, the way he pushed her to be stronger without making her feel weak, about belonging somewhere for the first time in her life. "I'm sure," she said. "Then we do it tonight, before they can create more obstacles." They gathered at midnight in the fortress chapel, a small stone room with no decoration except candles and ancient symbols carved into the walls. Marta stood as witness, her face solemn. Kael had changed into traditional ceremonial clothes, dark leather and fur, silver clasps shaped like wolf heads. He'd given Lyra a dress of deep burgundy, simple but beautiful, with a cloak lined in white fur. "You know the words?" Marta asked. Kael nodded. "My father taught me before he died." He took Lyra's hands, his grip warm and steady. The candlelight cast shadows across his face, making him look both dangerous and achingly vulnerable. "I, Kael Draven, Alpha of the Mountain Packs, take you, Lyra Vale, as my bondmate. I swear to protect you, to stand with you, to give you choice even when tradition would take it away." He pulled a small knife from his belt. "My blood to yours, my strength to yours, my life bound to yours until death breaks the tie." He drew the blade across his palm. Blood welled dark in the candlelight. Lyra's hands shook as she took the knife. "I, Lyra Vale, take you, Kael Draven, as my bondmate. I swear to stand with you, to fight beside you, to choose you every day, even when easier paths appear." She cut her own palm, the sting sharp and clean. "My blood to yours, my will to yours, my life bound to yours until death breaks the tie." They pressed their bleeding palms together. The pendant flared hot against Lyra's chest, and suddenly she could feel everything. Kael's heartbeat matching hers, his emotions flooding through the connection. Determination, fear, and underneath it all, something fierce and protective and achingly tender. Love. He loved her. The realization hit like lightning. "It's done," Marta said quietly. "By pack law, you're bound." Kael wrapped their joined hands in cloth, his eyes never leaving Lyra's face. "How do you feel?" "Like I just jumped off a cliff." "Good. Me too." They stood there for a moment, hands bound, the enormity of what they'd done settling over them like snow. Then Marta coughed. "You should probably kiss her. It's traditional." Kael smiled. "Is it? I'm making it traditional. Now kiss your wife before I change my mind about this whole thing." The kiss was different from the one on the battlements, slower, deeper, weighted with promise. When they finally broke apart, Lyra felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "We need to send word to the council," Kael said. "Let them know the betrothal is formalized." "They're going to be furious," Lyra said. "Let them be." The council's fury arrived 2 days later in the form of an emergency summons. Kael and Lyra were to appear before the full assembly immediately to answer questions about their irregular betrothal. "Told you," Lyra muttered, reading the summons. "We knew this was coming." Kael was already pulling on his formal coat. "The question is how we handle it. We tell them the truth. We use pack law, which they can't contest without creating a political nightmare. They'll try anyway. Then we make them regret it." The council chamber was exactly as imposing as Lyra remembered from the handful of state functions she'd attended. High ceilings, dark wood panels, a semicircle of raised seats where the council members sat in judgment. Every seat was filled, and the gallery behind them was packed with nobles and officials come to watch the spectacle. Thorn Draven sat in the center, his expression smug. "Alpha Draven," Corvain began. "Miss Vale, thank you for attending." "We didn't have much choice," Kael said. "Indeed, we've received your notice of formalized betrothal, using, I'm told, pack tradition, rather than the approved council ceremony. Pack tradition is legal and binding, has been for centuries. Legal, yes, but highly irregular, especially given the circumstances." Corvain leaned forward. "Some members of this council believe you're using technicalities to avoid proper oversight." "Some members of this council want to control who I marry," Kael shot back. "That's not their right." Thorn spoke up. "We're not trying to control anything. We're simply ensuring that this betrothal is legitimate and not a ploy to disrupt existing contracts." The existing contract was invalid, Lyra said. Every eye turned to her. Lord Petran was unfaithful before the wedding. That's grounds for voiding any marriage agreement. You've made that claim before, Delmar said. But you've provided no evidence. I offered to produce letters, which you've conveniently failed to do. Lyra felt the pendant pulse against her skin. The bloodstone wanted to be used, was practically begging her to tap its power. She could feel the room around her, could sense Corvain's uncertainty, Delmar's skepticism, Thorne's barely concealed rage, and beneath it all, something else. A memory. Not hers. The pendant was showing her something, images flashing through her mind. Her grandmother, younger, standing in this very chamber, speaking words that made the council members lean back in their seats, afraid. The Vale family had power here once, before her father traded it away for false security. Lyra stood straighter. You want evidence? Fine. But first I have a question. Why is this council so desperate to force me back to Petran? What's really at stake here? Silence. It's not about legality, Lyra continued. If it were, you'd have accepted our pact binding without question. No, this is about something else. Money, probably. Or political favor. You're out of line, Thorne snapped. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone on this council owes Petran. Maybe borrowed money. Maybe promised support in exchange for backing some pet project. She looked directly at Thorne. Maybe both. Thorne's face went red. These are baseless accusations. Then prove me wrong. Open your financial records. Let's see who's been doing business with House Coro. The chamber erupted in whispers. Several council members looked uncomfortable. Corvain slammed his gavel. Order! Miss Vale, these allegations are serious. Do you have evidence? Lyra didn't, but the pendant was feeding her information, reading the room, picking up on micro-expressions and tells. Thorne had definitely been dealing with Petran. The question was how much. I have enough, she said. Enough to know that my failed wedding cost someone in this room a great deal, and that's why you're so determined to reverse it. Cale was watching her with barely concealed admiration. She could feel his support through the bond, steady and strong. This is absurd, Thorne said. We're not on trial here. You are. You violated protocol, used legal loopholes. We used established law, Kyle interrupted. Pact tradition has been recognized by this council for 300 years. You can't invalidate it now just because you don't like the outcome. We can investigate claims of fraud, Delmar said. And if we find that this betrothal was entered under false pretenses. The chamber doors crashed open. A man stumbled in, bloodied and breathing hard. Lyra recognized him, one of Kyle's scouts. Alpha, the scout gasped. We caught them. Petran's men, half a mile from the fortress. Caught who? Kyle demanded. Assassins. 6 of them. They were planning to attack during the council hearing, kill Miss Vale while you were here, unable to protect her. The chamber exploded in noise. Counselors shouting, nobles demanding explanations. Kyle was already moving toward the scout, his face like stone. Are they alive? He asked. 3 are. The others fought to the death. Bring the survivors here, now. 10 minutes later, 3 men were dragged into the chamber in chains. They looked like professionals, scarred, hard-eyed, the kind who killed for money and didn't ask questions. Who hired you? Kale demanded. The lead assassin spat blood. We don't give up clients. You'll give up yours. Kale's voice was deadly quiet. Or I'll let my wife ask the questions. And trust me, you'll prefer my methods. Lyra stepped forward, the pendant blazing against her chest. She didn't know exactly what she was doing, but the bloodstone was guiding her, showing her how to reach into minds, to pull truth from reluctance. She locked eyes with the lead assassin. Who paid you? I don't... He stopped, his face going slack. Lord Petran, through an intermediary. And who was the intermediary? Counselor Thorne Draven. The chamber went silent. Thorne was on his feet. That's a lie. He's been coerced, tortured. I haven't touched him, Kale said. She asked a question. He answered. Corvain looked at Thorne, then at the assassin. Is this true? Did Counselor Draven hire you? Yes. The assassin's voice was flat, empty. He paid half up front, promised the rest after the Veil Girl was dead. He's lying. Thorne insisted. This is a setup, can't you see? They've orchestrated this whole thing. Have we? Lyra asked. Then explain how we convinced Patron to attack the fortress 3 days ago. Explain how we forced you to push this investigation. Explain. She pulled a folded paper from her sleeve. This. It was a letter. One she'd found in her mother's effects, tucked away with the bloodstone. She'd almost missed it. What is that? Corvain asked. A contract between my father and Counselor Thorne, dated 6 months before my wedding was announced. Lyra handed it to Corvain. It outlines a deal. My father gets financial backing from Thorne in exchange for political influence and a favorable marriage that would give Thorne leverage over House Coro's shipping interests. Corvain read the letter, his face darkening. This is highly irregular. It's highly illegal, Lyra corrected. Council members aren't allowed to broker marriages for political gain. That's been law since the Reformation. Thorne's face was purple now. Where did you get that? My mother kept records. She knew what was happening, even if she couldn't stop it. Lyra's voice softened. She wanted me to have proof, in case I needed it. The chamber was silent except for Corvain shuffling through the letter's pages. Finally, he looked up. Counselor Draven, you're suspended from this council pending a full investigation. If these allegations are proven true, you'll face criminal charges. This is a witch hunt, Thorne snarled. This is justice, Corvain said. Something we should have delivered months ago. He turned to Lyra and Kael. Your betrothal is recognized as legal and binding. The council offers its formal apology for the interference. It should have felt like victory, but Lyra just felt tired. What about Patron? She asked. Will be arrested and tried for conspiracy to commit murder, as will your father for his role in this arrangement. My father didn't know about the assassins, but he knew about the illegal contract. That's enough. Corvain's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry, Miss Vale. This should never have happened. No, Lyra agreed. It shouldn't have. They left the council chamber to chaos, reporters shouting questions, nobles whispering, guards trying to restore order. Kael kept his hand on Lyra's back, guiding her through the crowd to their carriage. Only when they were inside, the door closed and the horses moving, did she let herself breathe. You did it, Kael said. You took them apart. The pendant helped. The pendant amplified what was already there. That was all you. Lyra looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. She'd just destroyed her father's reputation, exposed a council conspiracy, and secured her freedom. And she felt nothing but relief. What happens now? She asked. Now we go home. And we live our lives the way we choose. Home. The word felt strange in her mouth. Good strange. Unless you'd rather stay in the city, Kael said carefully. You're free now. Truly free. I could what? Go back to a family that sold me? Build a life alone in a city that watched me be humiliated? Lyra shook her head. The fortress is home. Your home. Kael pulled her close, his arms strong and warm around her. Then let's go home. The journey back to the mountains took 3 days. They stopped at inns, ate at roadside taverns, and for the first time in her life, Lyra traveled as herself. Not as Marcus Vale's daughter or Patran's rejected bride, but as Lyra Draven, wife to the Alpha King. People recognized them. Some bowed, some whispered, but nobody tried to stop them or question their right to be together. When the fortress finally came into view, Lyra felt something settle in her chest. Relief, belonging, home. Marta met them at the gates with news. Your sister's here. Lyra froze. Celeste? Showed up this morning. Says she needs to talk to you. Marta's expression was unreadable. I put her in the solar. She's unarmed, but I've got guards outside. Lyra looked at Kael. I'll come with you. No, this is something I need to do alone. He didn't argue, just kissed her forehead. I'll be right outside if you need me. Celeste stood by the window, looking out at the mountains. She turned when Lyra entered, and the resemblance was jarring. Same dark hair, same features. But where Lyra had grown lean and hard over the past months, Celeste looked soft, fragile. You look different, Celeste said. I am different. I heard what happened at the council. Father's been arrested. Patron, too. Celeste's voice was small. Everything's falling apart. Good. Celeste flinched. Lyra, I need to explain about what you saw, about Petran and me. Don't. Lyra held up her hand. I don't need to hear it. But you don't understand. He came to me. He said you were cold, that you didn't want him. And you believed him, or did you just not care? Celeste's eyes filled with tears. I thought if he chose me instead, maybe Father would finally see me. Maybe I'd be worth something. So you betrayed your own sister for our father's approval. Lyra shook her head. That's even sadder than I thought. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I know that now. Celeste stepped forward. But we're still family. Maybe we could rebuild. No. The word hung in the air. Final. Lyra, please. I spent my whole life being told family mattered more than anything, that I owed loyalty to people who sold me, betrayed me, treated me like property. Lyra's voice was steady. I'm done with that. You want forgiveness? Fine. I forgive you, but I don't want you in my life. Where am I supposed to go? Father's ruined. No one will take me. That's not my problem. Lyra walked to the door. There's a convent in the eastern provinces. They take women who need sanctuary. I'll arrange passage and enough coin to get you started. After that, you're on your own. You'd send me away? After everything we've been through? I'm giving you more than you gave me. Lyra opened the door. Take it or don't. Your choice. She left Celeste standing there and didn't look back. Kael was waiting in the corridor as promised. How do you feel? Like I just cut out something rotten. Good. That means it's healing. That night they held a feast in the Great Hall. Not for any special occasion, just because they were home and alive and together. The entire fortress came, servants and guards and stable hands, all of them laughing and drinking and telling stories. Sarah stood and raised her cup. To the Lady Lyra, who proved that running away is sometimes running towards something better. The hall roared approval. Marta stood next. To the woman who stabbed first and asked questions later. You'll fit in just fine here. More cheers. Then Kyle stood and the hall fell quiet. I've been alone a long time, he said. Built walls higher than mountains because that seemed safer than letting people in. And then a woman covered in blood and terror threw herself into my carriage. And everything changed. He looked at Lyra. You reminded me what strength really means. Not isolation, not control, but choosing to stand with someone, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He raised his cup. To my wife, who ran from fate and rewrote it entirely. The hall erupted in noise, cheering, stomping, cups slamming on tables. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, but she was smiling too hard to care. Later in their room now, not just hers, Kael helped her out of the formal dress she'd worn for dinner. The council's going to demand public appearances, he said. Official ceremonies, all the pomp they couldn't force on us before. Let them demand. We'll show up when we want to. And the bloodstone? They'll want to study it, understand its power. Lyra touched the pendant. They can want all they like. It's mine. Ours, Kael corrected. We're bound now. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. Even the fortress? Especially the fortress. He pulled her close. You're not just my wife. You're my partner, my equal. And if you want to tear down every stone and rebuild it differently, that's your right. I don't want to change it. I like it exactly as it is. Even the drafty corridors? Even those. They stood together in the firelight, and Lyra marveled at how far she'd come. From the terrified woman who'd run from her wedding to this, a woman who'd faced down the council, exposed corruption, and claimed her own power. I love you, she said. The words felt strange but right. I should have said it sooner. I know you do. Kael's smile was gentle. I've known since you told Petran you'd rather die than go back to him. That's when I knew you were mine. Possessive. Completely. He kissed her, slow and deep. And you're stuck with me now. Pack bonds don't break. I wouldn't want them to. Outside, the wind howled through the mountains, carrying snow and the promise of winter. But inside, surrounded by stone and warmth and the steady beat of Kael's heart, Lyra felt nothing but peace. She'd run from a life that would have killed her slowly, and found one worth living fiercely. In the months that followed, stories spread. About the runaway bride who became a queen, about the alpha king who'd found his match, about a woman who'd worn a bloodstone and changed the balance of power without raising an army. The council reformed its marriage laws. Petran was exiled, his house stripped of titles. Marcus Vale died in prison, alone and unmourned. And in the mountain fortress, Lyra trained new arrivals, other women who'd run from bad situations, looking for sanctuary. She taught them to fight, to read the loopholes in contracts, to see their own worth. Kyle watched her work with something like awe. "You're building an army," he said one afternoon, watching her spar with a young woman who'd fled an abusive father. "I'm building a family," Lyra corrected, "one that chooses each other." Same thing in the end. Maybe it was. 5 years later, Lyra stood on the battlements holding her daughter, dark-haired and gray-eyed like her father, but with her mother's stubborn chin. Below, the fortress had grown. New buildings, new people, new life. "What are you thinking about?" Kyle asked, joining her. "How different this is from what I imagined." "Better or worse?" "Different. Better." She looked at him. "Do you ever regret it? That I forced you into this?" "You didn't force me into anything. I chose you the moment you threw yourself into my carriage." He kissed her temple. "Best decision I ever made." Their daughter squirmed, reaching for the pendant around Lyra's neck. It glowed faintly in the afternoon light. "She'll have magic," Kael said. "Like you." "Like us," Lyra corrected. "She'll have both. Your strength, my power." "That's going to be terrifying. That's going to be perfect." They stood together as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. And Lyra thought about the woman she'd been, desperate and terrified, running through streets in a wedding dress, convinced her life was over. She'd been wrong. Her life hadn't been over that day. It had finally begun.